It was a quiet morning just before dawn in Temüjin's camp. The cool air of the steppe carried a sense of peace, and his family and followers slept soundly, believing, if only for a moment, that their troubles were behind them. But they were mistaken. Even as they slept, a force of 300 Merkit warriors was thundering toward them, their horses kicking up dust as they rode with a singular purpose: revenge. The Merkits had long held a grudge against Temüjin. Years earlier, his father had kidnapped his mother, Holun, from their tribe, and now they saw an opportunity to strike back before he grew too powerful. News traveled fast across the vast Mongolian steppe, and word of Temüjin's recent escape from captivity and his alliance with Ong Khan had spread widely. The Merkits, feeling threatened by his rise, had decided to act. At the camp, an old woman lay sleeping with her ear to the ground. A sudden vibration startled her awake, the distant but unmistakable sound of hooves approaching at full speed. She cried out, sounding the alarm, but there was little time to prepare. Temüjin, his mother, his allies, and even his young son, only 5 years old, scrambled to mount their horses and flee. But in the chaos, Borte, Temüjin's wife, was left behind. Accounts differ as to why. Some say she chose to stay behind, much like her grandmother had done before her. Others believe that Temüjin lost track of her in the confusion. Some even suggest that he may have deliberately left her behind as a strategic sacrifice to buy time for the rest to escape. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. When the Merkits arrived and found Borte, they abandoned their pursuit and took her captive instead. Temüjin and his remaining followers fled into the mountains, following the familiar elk trails he had known since childhood. For 4 days, they remained hidden, surviving on their knowledge of the land. When he finally emerged, he saw that the immediate danger had passed. Overcome with gratitude, he vowed to always honor the mountains as his place of deliverance. He saw his survival as a sign that he was destined for greatness, but the loss of Borte was a heavy blow. Temüjin now faced a difficult choice. He had 3 options before him. He could return to his old camp and resume a pastoral life. However, he knew that no matter how much wealth or status he gained, he would always be vulnerable to raids. Alternatively, he could retreat north to the isolated forests of his childhood, where he could live off the land. It would be a safe life, but not a prosperous or honorable one. The final option was to seek out his patron Ong Khan and ask for his help. Though Temüjin had previously declined Ong Khan's offer to serve under him, his current situation left him little choice. If he wanted to recover his wife and strike back at the Merkits, he needed powerful allies. Ong Khan was furious when he heard of the Merkit attack. He had taken Temüjin under his protection, and the raid was an insult to his authority. Without hesitation, he offered Temüjin a force of 20,000 warriors to exact revenge. He also suggested that Temüjin enlist the aid of Jamukha, his childhood friend and sworn blood brother. Jamukha had his own reasons to hate the Merkits, as he had once been captured and enslaved by them, only to escape and establish himself as a leader of his own tribe. Eager to settle old scores and strengthen his position, Jamukha pledged 2 cavalry divisions to Temüjin's cause. Messengers were sent across the steppe, arranging a time and place for the armies to meet. Jamukha arrived on schedule with his forces, 6,000 warriors, each with multiple spare horses. But Ong Khan and Temüjin took their time, meeting up along the way before proceeding to the rendezvous. By the time they finally arrived, Jamukha was furious. His men had been living off scarce supplies, their horses grazing enormous amounts of grass each day, and their prolonged wait had put them at risk of being discovered by the Merkits. He scolded Temüjin and Ong Khan for their delay, and though they apologized, the incident planted the first seeds of discord between the 2 sworn brothers. When the time came to strike, the combined forces moved north to the Merkit camp. The Merkits, stationed across a river, saw them coming and attempted to flee. Despite the lack of complete surprise, the attack was a success. Temüjin stormed through the camp, desperately searching for Borte, calling her name over the chaos. Borte, unsure of who was attacking, initially fled with the other captives, fearing she was about to be taken by yet another group of raiders. But then she heard Temüjin's voice cutting through the din of battle. Recognizing him, she turned and ran straight toward him, seizing the reins of his horse. In the heat of the fight, Temüjin almost struck her down, mistaking her for an enemy. But as soon as he realized who she was, he dismounted and embraced her. It was a decisive victory. The Merkits were scattered, and both Temüjin and Jamukha had their revenge. But their joy was short-lived. Soon after, it became clear that Borte had been raped by her captors and was pregnant. 9 months later, she gave birth to a son. Temüjin claimed the child as his own, but doubt lingered over the boy's paternity, and he was never fully accepted as Temüjin's heir. For a time, Temüjin and Jamukha's families camped together, their alliance reaffirmed through another oath of blood brotherhood. They exchanged golden sashes and horses as symbols of their bond. But cracks in their relationship continued to widen. Jamukha, who came from noble lineage, favored the traditional Mongolian aristocracy. Temüjin, on the other hand, championed meritocracy, attracting followers from all social classes. Over time, Jamukha began treating him as a subordinate rather than an equal. One day, as they rode together, Jamukha suggested they separate their camps. Temüjin should take the goats and sheep to the river, while Jamukha and his men remained with the horses near the mountains. It was a deliberate insult. Horses were the wealth of the steppe, and by keeping them for himself, Jamukha was asserting his superiority. Temüjin consulted his mother about the situation, but it was Borte who intervened. She had lost all trust in Jamukha and urged Temüjin to break away entirely. That very night they fled, taking with them anyone who was willing to follow. By dawn, minor clans under Jamukha's leadership had caught up with them, defecting to Temüjin's camp. Though he lacked the legitimacy of noble birth, he offered them something more valuable, the chance for advancement based on ability rather than lineage. At just 19 years old, Temüjin had taken a critical step toward power. What had begun as a personal dispute with Jamukha would evolve into decades of brutal civil war. Their conflict was not only personal but ideological. Jamukha sought to preserve the aristocratic traditions of Mongol society, while Temüjin envisioned a new order based on loyalty and merit. Their battle would shape the future of the Mongolian steppe, setting Temüjin on the path to becoming one of history's most formidable conquerors. Genghis Khan,